Personal branding is not just for entrepreneurs. So today's episode is going to be all about developing your personal brand in the corporate arena. I know that some people think personal branding in the corporate arena. What are you talking about, Kelly? Well, personal branding is not just for them over there, us entrepreneurs who are out here building our businesses and, doing what we do outside of working for somebody else as a W-2 employee. I want you to think about the most respected leaders in your industry. What makes them stand out? I think if you really take a look at these people, you'll see that it's not just their skills, but their personal brand. So their own unique mix of their professional identity and their personal values. So what I want to do today is really talk about how you can develop your own personal brand that not only represents who you are, but will also help to propel you to new heights in your career, whether that's to expand or elevate or sometimes to exit, right, the corporate arena. Whatever it is that you want to do, developing your personal brand is so vitally important to enhancing your influence and elevating your career. Now, let me drop a little thing on you. Because what I want you to understand is that when you start to do this, not everyone is going to be happy about it. This is what happened to me back in 2018 when I started to really work on my personal brand. I was still working as a full-time trial attorney. But I understood that I wanted to transition out of the practice of law. I wanted to become a professional speaker. And in order to do that, I had to start really elevating my own personal brand, right? So outside of what people knew me to be as an employment law trial attorney, I wanted to establish who I am and who I wanted to be, in the space that I wanted to be in it as a professional speaker. Well, this didn't sit well with my bosses, and they let me know it. And it really deteriorated our relationship to the point that we parted ways at the end of 2019. But I am so glad that I did not allow them to stop me. Because I kept on my path, because I decided that this is what was important to me, this is what was going to allow me to live in my purpose. I just kept going. I just kept building my brand. And thankfully, I did that because when once we separated our relationship, once they told me they could no longer afford to pay me and I wouldn't have a job after the end of 2019, I had done so much work to develop my personal brand around being a professional speaker and being an expert in unconscious bias and workplace investigations and bystander intervention. I had written a book. I had delivered my TEDx, which is now an award-winning TEDx. And I had built out my website. I had done all of these things. So when that happened, I was able to hit the ground running. Imagine if I had listened to them. Imagine if I had let them just shut me down and dim my light and just go back into my little corner and do what they wanted me to do. I would have been behind the eight ball when they decided that they no longer wanted me to be there. So whether you're thinking that you want to stay in the corporate space, which is perfectly fine, or if you want to, that at some point you want to transition out into the entrepreneurial space, either way, developing a personal brand is crucial to your success. So we're going to talk today about some of the things that you can do to really develop your personal brand. And you'll see that in these episodes that I'm sharing, they're really going to be tactical. They're going to be tactical. They're going to be practical. They're going to be the tips and the steps that you need to do, because I think it's important to not just tell you things, but also to give you the ways to accomplish it. Okay. So one of the first things that I want you to think about developing your personal brand in the corporate space is really defining your professional identity. So start by understanding who you are as a professional. So take an inventory, right? Check your receipts. What are your core competencies? What are your values? And yes, your values matter. Your core values really do come into play with your professional identity. I think sometimes what we do is that we want to separate our personal from our professional. And I know that that's something that women do often. And that comes from societal norms, things that we have encountered throughout our lives from the times we were children to, our adulthood about really compartmentalizing. But when you think about developing your professional identity, I want you to think about this very holistically. So pulling all of your personal and your professional together. So yes, what are your core competencies? What are your skill sets? What are you really, really good at? What can you do with your eyes closed? What can you do better than anybody else? What are your values? What are your unique perspectives on things, right? So, they always talk about opinions and what they say about opinions, but I want you to think about what is your point of view on things. I always say that opinions are fleeting, and a point of view is the thing that you will take a stand for. Like you are a stand for a particular thing. So for me, when it comes to, speaking and the speaking business, my perspective on this is one that we deserve to get paid, right? As women, we deserve to be paid our value. And so, my point of view on this and the why behind this is that I am a stand for women's value not being erased. So that's my unique perspective on this. And that's how I show up. So everything that I'm doing, I show up from that context. So I want you to think about what are the unique perspectives that you have and that you bring to your role. And I want you to think about it this way too. I want you to think about the unique perspectives and the values and the competencies that you have in your current role, but I also want you to think about it long term. I want you to think as a visionary about what it is for the role that you desire. Right. So whether that is a new role in the current company, it's a new role in another company, or it's your role as you transition out of the corporate space. So develop and define your professional identity for where you are now, but also with an eye towards where you are going. Second, let's think about really being consistent across the interactions that we have, right? So I want you to ensure consistency in how you present yourself in every interaction, from meetings to emails to corporate presentations to social media. I want you to develop a brand identity. So when we're talking about this professional identity, this is about developing your brand, right? And I want you to think about that. And as you start to communicate, as you start to show up, there needs to be a consistency around how you're doing that, because this will reinforce your brand. If you look at my brand and if you look across, LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, which I don't even like, but Instagram, wherever I am, there is a consistency about how I present myself. There's a consistency about how I interact. There's a consistency about the words that I use, the tone that I use, the colors that I use. There's a real consistency. I always tell people what you see is what you get, right? And so whether you meet me in person or you're, watching me on social media, what you see is what you get, because it is the brand, the professional identity that I have created for myself. And that is how I want to be representing myself in the world. And that's what I want to use and leverage for people to come up with their perceptions, because we know that perception is reality. And we don't have control over what people perceive, but we do have control about how we show up and create the environment, the context in which they perceive us, right? So we can influence, right? We can influence their perceptions. So consistency is one of the ways that we do that. You also have to be visible. You have to be visible. And the thing that I've been thinking about lately is I'm really, really visible But one of the things that I noticed about myself is that I'm not vocal, right? And so visibility and being vocal, I think, are different things. So what do I mean by that? So, when people tell you to increase your visibility, you have to be visible. I don't want you to think that that means that you have to be everywhere all the time. I always talk to my clients. It's the clients that I work with, either executives or I'm speaking with, entrepreneurs who want to leverage speaking. I talk to them about optimizing your presence, right? So optimizing your visibility. Where do you need to be? This will become clear to you when you understand who it is that you're trying to attract, right? And so in part of like defining your professional identity, it's understanding again who's your audience, and what are you trying to achieve with creating your personal brand. And so when you think about optimizing your presence and your visibility, it'll become very clear to you about where you need to show up and how you need to show up. And also inside of the corporate space, optimizing and increasing your visibility also means taking action. So it might mean, taking on high impact or high profile projects that you otherwise might, shy away from because you're just like, I don't really feel like doing that. But if you really want to develop a brand, if you really want to be that go-to person, if you want to increase your authority and your influence, these are some of the things that you have to do, because this allows you to really exhibit your thought leadership. So this is the part about being vocal, right? So when we're visible, it's one thing for people to see you. Oh, but it's another thing for them to hear you. And so being vocal means speaking up in meetings and sharing your insights on, whether it's internally or externally. It means contributing to, if there's panels or there's articles, if your company has a newsletter, submitting articles to that, or just maybe it's a tip of the day or something. And I know a lot of companies now have their own podcast. So, try to be a guest on the podcast or try to contribute some way, whatever it is that your organization has that allows you to be visible and vocal. That is a game changer. I promise you that is such a game changer, because the other, and let me say this about being vocal. It's not just being vocal for being vocal's sake, right? And it's not just speaking up in meetings. It is really being intentional and strategic. And going back to the whole defining your professional identity about what your unique perspectives are, what do you stand for? What is your point of view? Ensuring that when you decide to be vocal, that you bring all of those things into play, right? And that there's a consistency, that when people hear you speak and when they hear, that you're going to be showing up to the meeting and you're going to be sharing your insights, they know what to expect. They know that you're going to be giving value. They know that you're not just going to be reporting on things that you heard from somebody, that you really have thought about this. There is some thought leadership behind it. And then we also need to network, and we need to do this strategically. If you, people know this about me, I'm an ambivert and I do not like networking. I can speak in front of a million people all day, every day, but to go into like a networking event and just be one-on-one and hey, and interrupting, like coming into conversation, I just don't like it. It's not my strong suit, and I know it. It's something I'm working on though. But when we're talking about really developing our personal brand and inside of the corporate space, you have to really understand how to network strategically. This is one of the things when I think about my career as a lawyer, and if I think about any regrets that I have, it is that I did not understand the value of networking, and also that I wasn't really taught that, right? And so when you're in the practice of law and you're in the early practice of law, they just want you to be a worker bee. They're not necessarily trying to help you build your business or build a book of business. One part of that is because that's how they make their money. And so they don't need you dipping into it. But understanding how to really build a network is, again, is a game changer for you. So when you're building your network, think about building the network inside the organization. So who are the people inside your organization that can become mentors for you, that can be sponsors for you? And understanding that, I always say that a mentor will show you the way and a sponsor will make the way, right? So sponsors are in those rooms that you're not in, but they know you, they know your brand, they know what you're capable of, and they will be a champion for you. They're going to be vocal for you, right? So you've developed your own brand around being visible and vocal. And so now they see you, they hear you, they understand you. And so now they can go and vouch for you. Right. And so you want to do that inside your organization, but you also want to do it outside of your organization. Are you in, some type of community group, your family, your friends, whoever, people who you used to work with? You want to really network strategically and let people know what's going on with you and what your goals and desires and dreams are and how they can support you. And so you also want to make sure that when you are connecting with people, that you're connecting with people who align with your brand values. So back to when you're defining your professional identity and understanding what your values are, right? You want to make sure that the connections that you're making are in alignment and that the people that you're connecting with can help amplify your presence, right? And help you to get towards your goals. Now, this doesn't mean that I know some people think, oh, it's, that you're using people. No, it doesn't. It just means that you're very clear about who you are, what you want, where you want to go. And so you're going to make sure that the people who surround you in your network are those people and also people who you can be of value to, right? So this is a give and take when we're talking about networking strategically. And then finally for today, let's talk about feedback and adapting, right? So I know some of us are really high achievers and you might be in a really high position and you're not necessarily used to being given feedback. You might be the one who gives feedback, right? But I want us to think about as we're developing this personal brand, as we're really starting to really stand in and own our power, that it is important for us to really regularly seek feedback on our performance, on our public perception. So remember, when we talk about perception is reality, right? Perception is people's reality. And so what we want to make sure is that we're always checking in. Now, if you've listened to me before, you may hear me say things like, what other people think about you is not your business. And I do believe that. But I also understand that what other people think about you is data. And it is data that we need to take in and analyze and see if there's something that we're doing. Remember, I said we can influence people's perception, we can't control it. But if people have a perception about us that is contrary to what we believe that we're putting out into the world, then we need to analyze the data and see why that is. Why is it that people have this perception of me as being someone who's not responsive, of being somebody who is, nasty or aggressive or any of the things, right, that you may think are contrary to who you are, when you think that you're putting out into the world that you're like the kindest person, that you are so calm, that you're not being aggressive, you're being assertive. There's something, right? And listen, let me stick a pin right there. Some people just going to think what they want to think. But if what you're finding, that the data that you're always getting, the feedback that you're always getting is on that negative side, that side that is contrary to what you believe, then that is a time for you to really be, concerned about what people are saying and adjust, but not adjust, like don't change who you are, but adjust how you're showing up, going back to that visibility part, going back to that consistency part. Go see what you need to do in order to change that or modify that so that you can influence the perception to be the perception that you want it to be, right? So use what you get, use this information to refine your brand and to address any areas that might not align with your desired image. So I know that was a lot. That was a lot today, but I want to go back over so that we kind of just, pull the pieces together and then, go back and review this if you really want to hone in on a particular point. But what we talked about today and really making sure that we can develop this personal brand is to define your professional identity. Make sure that you're consistent across your interactions, whether those are online or offline. Be visible and be vocal, but leverage thought leadership when you're being vocal. Network strategically, and I would also say intentionally, right? So network intentionally and strategically, and regularly seek feedback and adjust as necessary to refine your brand and address any areas that may be off in terms of what you think around your desired image. All right. So that's what we have for you today. I want you to think about what you can do. Which of these areas do you need to work on to develop your personal brand? Some of you, because again, in corporate, this is not really something that is really pushed or encouraged. It's around developing your own brand. So you might be starting at the beginning, right? Developing your professional identity. Some of you may already have all that, but you need to really work on your visibility and being more vocal. So I want you to reflect on where you are, where it is that you want to go. What is the vision for your career and the vision for your life? And go take the first step. Take whatever that first step is in defining your professional identity or updating, enhancing your professional identity, and go out there and be the most powerful you that you can be. Reflect on how this will really enhance your career and enhance your life, and take the steps necessary to build your brand and go out there and get what is yours. So until next time, take care.